Hi, everyone. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are located today. Thank you so much for joining us for this live webinar. In light of the ongoing coronavirus developments, we realize that there are growing concerns about bringing people together. Many organizations have instituted travel bans or are even embracing remote work currently. As a result, this has likely forced many L&D teams like yourself to quickly move training from in-person to online, and there's a need to do so at scale while maintaining, if not increasing, effectiveness. While there is an unfortunate crisis that forces us to be here together today, many of you are even thinking about collaborative online learning due to environmental issues, cost savings, or the need to scale your ambitious training efforts. Given this webinar's topic, we realize that scaling online training may be new to you and your organization. So our goal today is really to inform you of how you can scale online training programs around the globe with similar or better outcomes. We appreciate you joining us for this important conversation today. So for anyone who is unfamiliar with GoToWebinar, I just want to go through a couple of housekeeping items. Please note that you are all on mute. You can use your control panel as shown here to submit questions at any time during this product tour. We will be stopping throughout the webinar to address any questions that we receive, so we encourage you to ask away. You can also use the control panel to download some webinar resources like today's presentation slides through the control panel. At the end of the webinar, an exit survey will pop up. If you could take a few moments to fill out the survey and provide us with some feedback so that we can continue to improve our webinars, that would be greatly appreciated. Lastly, I do want to mention that we are recording this webinar, so if you'd like to rewatch it or share with a colleague who is unable to attend, you will receive the recording from us via email within 24 hours. Before we begin, I just want to take a moment to introduce myself and my colleague, Brittany. My name is Jessica, and I am the marketing manager here at NovoEd, and I'm joined today by our senior learning experience designer, Brittany Tawes. Brittany is a senior learning designer at NovoEd and has helped create and facilitate courses for many organizations such as National Geographic, Fidelity Investments, Hewlett-Packard Enterprises, ISC Business School, and Mowgli Mentoring. She is a scientist turned learning experience designer and is obsessed with using her research and teaching skills to design engaging and innovative learning experiences for all learners.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Jessica, for that intro. Really excited to be here and talk to you today.
Great. Like Brittany said, we are both so excited to be here with you all. We will begin the webinar with just a brief overview of NovoEd before diving into the 3 common concerns about designing online learning for scale. We are stopping for a Q&A after addressing each concern. So like I mentioned before, please send us all your questions and we will try to address them on this webinar today. So NovoEd was originally founded close to 8 years ago at Stanford's Social Algorithms Lab, and since then has grown to become the leading platform for collaborative learning at scale. The platform provides a comprehensive collaborative solution to develop the high-value capabilities that are critical to the success of modern business. Today, we meet the capability development needs of global corporations, executive education providers, training firms, and consulting firms, as well as social impact organizations. To date, over 1 million learners have developed their skills on the NovoEd platform. And in 2018, Fidelity Investments, as part of their strategy to invest in educational technologies for the workplace, acquired NovoEd. So before we dive deeper into our content for today, I just want to launch a quick poll asking you what types of in-person training your organization is currently prioritizing to move online. So you should see the poll pop up. Just note that you can select one or more of the options here. And if you marked other, please use the questions box to let us know what we may have missed. So I'll give you all a couple of seconds here to answer before I summarize and share the results. Thank you, everyone who has voted. I still see some people are answering, so I'll give it about 10 or so seconds before I close the poll and share the results. Great, thank you. I will go ahead and close the poll and share all these results with you. So honestly, I was not sure what to expect when I asked this question, but it looks like leadership training still remains a very big priority for you all, and I think that makes sense. We have been seeing an increased need on moving leadership training online, just because we still need to continue with all of our business continuity plans. Onboarding, I think, is no surprise, also a big one. Typically, I see onboarding is done in person, so the need to move that online is something that we agree with. I would say that all of these categories are courses that we've helped build for all of our customers. And if you've marked other, please let us know what we may have missed here. Thank you so much.
Awesome. So I'll take it from here, Jessica. It was great seeing the results of those polls. Again, like Jessica mentioned, it's not surprising. A lot of these types of courses will need to be moved online, not just because of the public health issue that we're currently experiencing, but online learning is really the future of learning. Being able to scale it, being able to reach more people globally, being able to run more and more courses, and be more inclusive in your learning. It's not just for the top performers anymore. It's for everyone in your company to be more empowered to work better together. So as we go through this presentation, keep your answer in mind of what you may have chosen as the initiative that you're most interested in putting online. Maybe you chose multiple ones, and that's really what the goal of this presentation is. So I just want to talk a little bit about what I will discuss with you today. And those are the 3 common concerns that I have heard about designing online learning for scale. So these are actual questions that were either answered in our previous or asked in our previous webinar, which I'll review the content of in a bit, or questions that I've heard from my clients over and over again, even before all of this happened currently, on how we can design at scale, and not just designing at scale, but making it impactful. We want to make sure that our learners are getting the best experience possible in our online modalities. So the 3 common concerns I'm going to address today include, 1, I need to have all of my in-person courses moved online 3 months. How do I even start? I have a very small team and limited resources. How can I facilitate all of these online offerings? 3rd, my in-person courses were amazing. They're awesome. How do I maintain the impact of these at scale and online? So I'm going to help you address all 3 of these today. But before I get too deep into it, I do want to take a minute to review our last webinar. This was hosted by my colleague, Drew, last week. If you haven't seen it, I have the link here at the bottom of the screen. You can get this link from the downloadable content for the webinars. This is a great resource that really starts by telling you how to move your content online. So this is content maybe you had in person that you need to very quickly move online. And this is really done in 4 steps. So I just want to very briefly review them. So the first step is stretching learning over time. So maybe you had a 2-day in-person training on leadership that now needs to go online. You can make that into a 4-week-long experience where people can work on different activities live through online events, and then they can practice that in their day-to-day work, apply it, and then come back to learn more. So stretching over time really helps increase retention and allowing people to practice what they've learned in the flow of learning. The next step, step 2, is design for application. So I know we probably have all taken online courses that we couldn't wait to get through. There were maybe some videos that were boring, some quizzes that you didn't even need to watch the videos to be able to answer. That doesn't really result in actual learning for your employees. So designing for application is really important. So this could mean things like creating assignments where learners have to actually apply what they've learned, reflecting on different things they have seen at their job, or just interacting with each other to have a deeper set of learning. Step 3 is all about how do you get the content you need to make your online experience robust. So that could be anything from creating your own content. Maybe you take a short video from your phone for people to watch, or even curating, which is even better, saves time. This is where you think about what resources do I already have that I can use. Maybe that's a LinkedIn Learning subscription or some videos that you've used in your onboarding course in the past. And then finally, the most important key to moving your content online is to incorporate that social interaction, social learning. So one of the things that we enjoy most about in-person experiences, since we are human, is the human interaction and the ability to ask questions, bounce ideas off people, and learn from others' experiences. You can do this online. And when you do, you're able to create not only a sense of community within your organization, but you can also increase your learning impact. So there's a lot more information about this in the webinar recording if you want to check it out. But I do want to set the stage because this is the first step in moving your content online and scaling. You need to at least have some content to begin with. So thinking about that really helped us go from an in-person experience to how would I create some kind of online experience. Now, what I want to talk about is how do we do that but scale it? And so scaling could mean a variety of things. It could mean maybe your in-person training was for 10 people, but your online version can be for 400 and they can be global. It could also mean you only used to have one type of course or two types of course, and now you can have 40 or 50 because you're not limited by space or resources like food and hotel rooms, stuff like that. So I want to talk to you about how we get there, but also how we keep the impact. So we don't just want to copy and paste, transfer stuff in person, and just put it online and hope that it works, because that's not typically how you get the most impact for your experiences. So the first thing to do about this is to think about what makes those in-person experiences so great. So this is just a little visualization modified from the training industry that shows the scale of learning experiences from low to high. That's how easy it is to scale. And then collaboration on our y-axis, so low collaboration and high collaboration. So these in-person experiences in the classroom, individual, group coaching, they have super high collaboration, super high social interaction, which is great for learning, but they're really not scalable. Again, you need people, you need classrooms, you need hotels, you need people to be able to travel. Like right now, they can't do that. So how can you take that and make it scalable? Now, when we think of online learning, we tend to think of this little circle on the bottom right-hand corner. So maybe a PowerPoint with someone talking over it, a video lecture, maybe even like a 4-hour webinar. Now, those things are easy to scale. You can put as many people in there as you want and reuse that content, but there's not a lot of collaboration there. Now, there are ways that you can have best of both worlds. You can scale collaboration, and one way to do that is through a collaborative online learning experience. So that could mean a lot of different things for you. It could mean maybe just having a couple webinars, but also having breakout rooms. It could mean having a course experience on a platform like NovoEd, where it's a 6-week-long program and people have teams and discussions and live events. Basically, the more collaboration you can put into your online experiences, the more impact you'll get. So keep that in mind as we go through here. Even if we have to move this in-person training to online super fast, any little bit of collaboration that you could add to the experience will only increase your impact. Okay, so I'm going back to these 3 common concerns now that I've set the stage on what does scale actually mean and what you need to be thinking about as we go through here. So the first question that I'm going to talk about is this one. I need to have all of my in-person courses moved online in 3 months. How do I even start? This sounds really scary, honestly. Maybe it's even you need everything moved online in 1 week. Maybe you're lucky and you have a 6-month runway, but this is going to need to happen, especially in the current world situation right now. And the more that you focus on getting started in the right way, the better it will be when you start to scale. So I'm going to go through some slides for this question, and then I will stop and answer questions from you guys. So feel free to hit up the comment box and ask me anything that you might want to hear about in a few slides. Okay, so when we think of scale, we have to start somewhere. So to scale big, you need to first start small. So I already reviewed what we talked about in the last webinar on how to create a course quickly, but you need to think about what initiative will you pick. And remember, this is a learning experience for you guys too. So what you need to do is just get that minimum viable product out and think of this with your design thinking hat. It's all an iterative process. It's a learning process. The first course will probably have room for improvement, but honestly, I've run 15, 20 different versions of one course, and I can learn every single time I run it. So it's definitely important to keep a mindset of iteration and that there'll be room to grow with each time. So here are a couple options for the first program that you could choose to move online. So these are options that I've seen that are most common with the clients that I work with. And obviously the option one would be the most pressing. Did something just get canceled that you need to have online immediately? That obviously would be the most important. Another option to pick for your first initiative may be a course with the greatest impact. So we've seen a lot of clients that the very first courses that they put online are these soft skills, diversity and inclusion courses, like an unconscious bias course, for instance. And the nice thing with this is by putting this online first, you can immediately have it available to all of your employees at your company at once. No more waiting to sign up for a workshop. You can roll this out and start seeing impact in your organization very quickly. And then option 3 is just, what is easiest for you? Is there a course that already has some online components that you can use? No need to start from scratch. That might be a good first option as well. And once you have an idea of what initiative you want to use, so make a plan before you get started. Now, this may sound obvious, but this could be the thing that when you need to scale quickly, that you may skip over. So even having a document that you can write down about who is on your team. Can you find other people in your organization to bring onto your team? Maybe there's a group that used to do the in-person training, or that is maybe a little bit less busy with the current global situation. Bring them in, almost like curating from your organization, and get them to help out. Knowing what your resources are in terms of technology. Do you have the ability to do live events? Do you have a learning management system or a learning experience platform? What things do you have that you could use quickly? And then obviously, what's your timeline? How quickly do you need to get this out? Who needs to do what? It's a little bit of a project management type of skill. And you can see on the right here with this little GIF that's circling through, this is a common thing that we provide for our clients, just figuring out what needs to be done and when. If you spend time on this, you can then use this for every online experience you create, which really helps you scale. And then finally, one thing as you're creating your first couple online experiences, keeping in mind how you can save time in the future. Again, we're focused on scale here and scaling for impact. So being able to centralize and standardize your process. So there's no need to recreate the wheel each time. Each course doesn't need to be some bespoke type of experience. It could be if you have the resources, but it's not necessary. So a couple things that you could do to help centralize and standardize this is deciding on some common structures. So say I have 15 one-person workshops that I run. All of those I'll turn into 3 webinars and 2 assignments. Okay, I have a couple leadership development programs. All of those will get turned into 6-week social online courses. So taking some time to think about this ahead of time will allow you to save significantly more resources down the line. And even including things like a style guide. Do you have certain colors that you like? Do you have certain logos that you want to be showing? Having that in a repository that everyone can access will make scaling easier. So I want to share a couple examples of some things that I've seen clients use that really help be able to scale. And that is creating a common framework for your content. So I'm just going to go through option 1 as an example. So for here you see learn, quiz, apply. So this is a framework for how you might organize an experience. Maybe you start by having learners learn something. Maybe it's an article that they read. Then they take a quiz on that to test their understanding. Then they need to apply it in either a couple open-ended questions or maybe an assignment. You can then multiply this 4 or 5 times, and then you have a full learning experience. You can also mix and match. So even if you go to option 2, maybe you're reading something, you're reviewing it, maybe that's a quiz, maybe that's a poll, and maybe you have a challenge. That could be a team assignment where you work on something related to that topic. And then maybe even give feedback to other learners on that. So keeping in mind how you want to structure this will not only benefit your learners because they'll know what to expect, but you can just mix and match and pull from your common frameworks for any learning experience you would create. This also can include just webinars or Zoom calls. You can use this in there as well. So something to keep in mind. All right, so I'm going to pass it back over to Jessica. If there's any questions that have come in, I'm happy to answer it before I move on to our next common concerns.
Thank you so much, Brittany. And yes, if you have any questions about what was just shared, please feel free to use your panel to let us know, and we're happy to address those questions. So the first question here is, what are some examples of first course topics that companies you have worked with have employed?
Great question. So this really varies depending on the company I'm talking to. Recently, it has been a lot of, onboarding type things. Hey, we need to get our sales team up and running fast. We can't fly everyone in. So how are we going to do that? That's kind of like the most pressing category. I've also seen a lot of things like that unconscious bias example was an example from one of our global customers. That was one of their first courses that they put in because that was really important to their company initiative. I've also seen a lot of things like leadership courses, a lot of onboarding, maybe some customer experience type courses. So really the gamut, it can go in a variety of different directions, but it really depends on what the urgent needs of your employees are.
Okay, thank you. And Brittany, how do you manage breakout rooms or group work in a course?
That's a great question. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in future slides, but a lot of it is thinking about how would I do this in person? A lot of it is the same skills that you're already using. So having a facilitator join the breakout rooms in Zoom, for instance, and helping initiate discussion. Reminding people, just like we did in this webinar, here's how you would submit a question. Maybe during the webinar or during the Zoom breakout rooms, you as a facilitator prompt people. Maybe you ask questions, stuff like that. For teams and more of like an online learning experience, you can do very similar things. You can also assign like a team leader or a group leader that is another learner to help facilitate those small sections. Again, I'll talk a little bit more about that in a few slides, but you can use the skills that you already have and just put them in a different modality.
Okay. And then the other question I'm seeing here that's popping up is, how long should the average course be?
Yeah, so that also depends. So if you had, say, a 1-hour workshop that you used to give, that doesn't need to be a 4-week-long course. But what I typically see, if you've had a 2-day workshop or a 3-day workshop, that turns really well into a 3-week learning experience or even a 4-week learning experience. If you've used to have a 2-month-long course, maybe that turns into a 6-month-long course online. So what tends to happen is when you move from in-person to online, you stretch that learning out. So that first key to moving your content quickly online, because that also allows people to apply in between your sessions. So again, it would depend, but if you can think of whatever I currently have, stretching it out, that's a good place to start. And if you have more specific questions about a specific use case, I'd be happy to address that as well.
Okay, thank you so much. There are other questions coming in, but let's go ahead and move on, and then we'll get back to these questions at the end of the second section.
Perfect. Awesome. I love hearing those questions. It's a good way to apply what you have learned while you're listening to this. Okay, so our second question is, I have a small team. How can I facilitate all of these digital offerings with such limited resources? This was actually a very common question that came in during this first webinar that we provided. So I want to take some time to really address these for you. And what you'll find as I go through this is a couple of the resources that you see on the GoToWebinar panel are really about this topic, since it's a very important topic for a lot of our customers and probably for a lot of you as well. So definitely feel free to check those resources out after this webinar. So facilitation, this is what makes our in-person great. You have a person up in the front, they're making eye contact, they're calling on people, they're smiling, they're encouraging interaction and encouraging discussion. That's what makes in-person so effective. Now, that can also be done online and frequently can be done easier and faster than face-to-face. So there's no need to fear digital facilitation. You can really be effective no matter how much time that you have. So what I want to share with you is a framework that we've put together at NovoEd about the different ways that you could facilitate a course. And we've tried to make this a little fun with different personas that you can take on. In the webinar resources, there'll be a downloadable worksheet about this and a downloadable ebook for you to learn more. But basically, these personas can vary depending on how much involvement you'd like to put in. So we go all the way from a trained conductor, which is low involvement, all the way up to a coach, which is high involvement. I'm going to talk about each of these and give some examples of what that might look like. But before I do that, I just want to preface this by saying, if you're a trained conductor and that's the persona you want, and you want to do low involvement, that is not a bad thing. It's not like low involvement is lower quality. This all can be extremely high quality. It just depends on your use case and the amount of time that you have to invest. So do not feel bad if all of your courses don't have a coach. If you have a compliance course, having a coach is just not necessary for most cases. So trained conductor would work better. So just keep that in mind as we go through these personas. So I want to start with the trained conductor, which is your lowest level of involvement for facilitation. And the key here is really saving time by automating. The nice thing about online, we can automate this stuff. So automate your communications. If you are in a platform that allows you to schedule them in advance, even better. If you just have a Gmail account, you can always, create these emails and have them sent out at different times. Let the online modality do the work for you. And also having a really easy way for learners to ask for help, whether that's an email that they respond to, whether it's a discussion board, maybe it's like an Ask Me Anything discussion board. As long as your learners have a way to contact you, this prevents a lot of the fears that they have about learning in a new type of environment. So here's a couple real examples of what this might look like. These were taken from our homegrown learning experience design course that's free, that we offer every quarter. And this really allows us as learning professionals to try out different techniques for facilitation to see what works best. So you can see here, one of my favorite things is this Ask Us Anything discussion board. Because not only can learners ask any questions they want, they can also do some peer learning by seeing what other questions people are asking and maybe even getting their questions answered by doing that. You can also see on the left just an example of a quick email that I could schedule months in advance to get sent out. And throughout these few slides, you'll see some of our customers who use these facilitator personas most frequently. So that's a trained conductor. Now we're going to move to camp counselors. This is the next level of involvement. And remember, these aren't discrete. You can pick and choose different things from each category, mash them up into something that really resonates with you. So camp counselor, if you've ever gone to a camp as a kid, you recognize the camp counselor as someone who's super fun, who's making sure everybody's happy, making sure that they're engaged, and really directing that interpersonal connection between people. We can do this online too. So you can do this by crafting reflective emails, maybe giving people shout outs for good work. This could also even work even if you're doing webinars. If there's someone who's been asking a great question, shout them out. Not only does that make them feel good, but it encourages people to want to get shout outs of their own and notice that other people are interacting in a way that maybe they are not, which is motivating. And then running a live event. So this could be a webinar, this could be a Zoom call, this could be a Zoom call where you have a whole panelist of different people in your company that all want to share different ideas. There's so many variations to do this, and this does take some work up front, but you can standardize it to be able to scale. And here's just an example of a really nice reflective email that was sent in the LXD course. You're really shouting out people, linking to their assignments, for example, so that a learner who sees this email can click in there and start exploring, learning at a different level where they're actually learning from peers without you needing to do anything. And because you're in an online modality, you really can check the data, see, okay, I need to send out an email today because my activity is going down, and be able to be very effective with very little time. And then finally, our coach persona. Everyone knows what the word coach means. You either are thinking of your coach from Little League or your professional development coach at your company. These are people who are keeping learners engaged and excited. Now, online, there's a whole range of interactions you could do here, but even just as little as providing some individualized feedback, keeping motivation high, you can do this with very little time across a lot of different courses while still getting a lot of benefit and impact from this facilitation. And here's just a couple examples. I'm not going to read them through, but you can check them out, of some different coaching that I've seen that has worked really well. So just saying things like, you're doing a great job. Here's a piece of feedback. Maybe try to think about this question. I'm really excited to see what's going to happen next. That doesn't take much time. It's a little formulaic, but it works. And it really does encourage people to complete the online course or online experience. We've found that learners that have a coach are about 56% more likely to actually complete an online course, which is a great metric that we're all looking for, because if learners are not completing the course, they're probably not learning the content that they need, and they're probably not applying it in their day-to-day. So those are just a few of the facilitator personas that you can choose from that make it easy to facilitate quickly and at scale. And I just want to point out that there is actually one more facilitator persona that I didn't have time to go over. So if you want to unlock that last facilitator persona, definitely check out the webinar resources for that ebook. And Jessica, if there's any questions that have come in, we can address those before we move on.
Great. Yeah, we do have a few questions that have come in so far, and thank you everyone for being so engaged. We really appreciate this, and we want to make this a conversation. So if anything comes up, please let us know. First question is, what would my facilitation look like if I'm doing just webinars?
Yeah, so it really is going to depend on your modality. But one of the things that you can do, which is actually something that Jessica and I are doing right now, we are in two totally different areas of town. We're in two totally different apartment buildings, but Jessica is responding to the questions and directing any help that needs to be done. So even just having someone that's answering learners' questions and providing assistance is a really good way to minimally facilitate your webinars or your online experiences. Another really good thing is if you have a small webinar, wouldn't work for us right now, but maybe there's only 10 people, have everybody share their share their faces, have everybody break up into breakout rooms so they can interact with people in a smaller, more personalized setting. So you can facilitate interaction by having other people or other groups do that for you. And a lot of this just comes with practice. You can try, maybe I'll try some polls. Okay, that worked, or maybe that didn't work the way I wanted. Maybe instead I'll call on people, or I will put a prompt in. Maybe I have an online course. Maybe I'll show the course during the webinar, have people respond to their discussion prompts live on the call, and then I interact that way. I've seen some clients do that also. So it really depends on how much time you have to put into it and how many people you have attending, but there's lots of possibilities.
Perfect. And Brittany, earlier you were talking, or rather showing, the reflective emails. Can you say more about what reflective emails are and why to use them? I realize this might be a new idea for some of our attendees today.
Yeah, definitely. So reflective emails can mean a variety of different things. What I do when I do a reflective email, my goals are, one, to motivate people to come back into my course. Maybe it's week 3 and people are getting tired. I want to motivate them by showing what things are happening in the course. So without even clicking in there, I'm linking to some people's assignments. I'm not only shouting out their good work, but I'm including a link directly for others to interact. So that first goal is, my main goal for this is to get people back into the experience in any way that I can. Another proponent of the reflective emails is just showing learners that, hey, I'm a facilitator, I'm an admin, maybe I'm a manager, I am seeing what you're doing. Like I am interacting with you in a way that you're not just putting things out into the void, it's being seen and it's being processed and reacted to. So those two things tend to, even just sending out a couple of reflective emails, I have found super high increases in engagement after those get sent out. And you're also kind of, tapping into that fear of missing out that people have. Oh my gosh, all these assignments are coming in. They haven't seen mine yet. I want to get in there and show them what I have learned too. So there's a few components there that make a good reflective email, but it's one of my favorite things to do and doesn't require a lot of work.
Great, thank you, Brittany. And do you think it's valuable to see the facilitator on video within your online program?
Yeah, I think anytime that you can show your face, it's better. Obviously, we're not doing that right now, so maybe we're not practicing what we preach at this exact moment. But especially currently, where out here in San Francisco, we need to be 6 feet away from other people. We need to stay in our houses. You forget how to interact with people in real life. So having those videos on where you can see people's facial expressions and their nonverbal communication is essential to really creating a deeper connection with people. So I would always suggest doing that if possible for your use case.
Perfect. And just the last question that I'm seeing here, and I think you might have briefly touched about this already in this section, but how do you cultivate self-learning using online materials?
Oh, that's a good one. So that has a lot of answers, but the short answer is, if you tell people what they should be doing and give some suggestions, that's a great way to cultivate self-learning. So if I have this huge, maybe it's a 12-month-long leadership program, and I just throw people in there and they don't know what they need to do or what their schedule is, there's too many unknowns and people get concerned, they freeze up, and they don't do what they need to do. It becomes too stressful for them to do self-learning. So what I like to do is set the stage. I say what this course is about. How do you navigate it? That's always an important thing. How do you access the stuff that you need to access? How long do I have to complete it? Maybe give a recommended cadence on how they should complete it. Maybe Module 1 and Module 2 should all be done by this date if you want to stay on schedule. So doing that and setting expectations really helps the learner experience and help people feel like they're in control of their learning without being overwhelmed. There's obviously lots of other possibilities there, but I think those first steps and the first touch points that you have with people are the most important for the learner experience. So making sure they're positive and achievable.
Perfect. Thank you, Brittany. I think we might have answered all of our questions for this section so far, so let's go ahead and move on. I do want to say that we are going to address questions again, so if anything pops up, as always, we encourage you to ask away. Thank you.
Great. Okay, so we've talked about our first question, talked about our second question. Now let's kind of put it together in this third main concern, which is my in-person courses were so awesome. How do I maintain that impact of my face-to-face online and at scale? This is a very common question that we hear and causes a lot of concern and anxiety for people who are moving in person to online. So I want to address some ways that we can do that. But the first thing I want to talk about is what makes these face-to-face learnings so effective. So here's a collection of things that I have found that make these face-to-face learning so effective. And I just want to say I used to be a teacher at a university where I did a lot of in-person training, a lot of in-person workshops, a lot of in-person onboardings for new employees. So I've done that, and I've also done a lot of these same things in online modality. So I understand where you're coming from, and I actually have a lot of examples that I'm going to be interspersing in here from both of those modalities. So going back, what makes face-to-face so effective? So things like being able to collaborate on group projects, having a coach or mentor in the room with you, helping you actually achieve your learning goals, peer sharing and storytelling, giving feedback on people's assignments or ideas. And for the admins of in-person training, it's really easy to track engagement. Your people are in the room, they are there with you. You don't know if, you know that they are there, and when they're talking, that they're engaging with you. Now, I really believe that you can do all of this in an online modality and at scale while keeping the impact and not taking literally all of your time. So I'm going to go through a couple of these and give some examples of what that might actually look like online. So one thing that you can do to keep engagement high in an online experience, and we talked about this a little bit in one of the questions that was asked, but using teams or groups of learners. So this is making a big experience feel smaller and more personalized by letting people interact in a smaller modality. So if you have a 1,000 learner course, that might be overwhelming to some people. Maybe not everyone wants to share, but if you're down to your 5-person group, you're way more likely to share. And that allows higher engagement without work from you, because it's kind of already set up within that small group. And like I mentioned, this can be done in a lot of ways, including breakout rooms and webinars, teams in an online course, or even just some interest groups, whether that's on LinkedIn or some other type of social media. So I want to share an example from one of the Fortune 500 companies that we work with. They're a global company. They used to have in-person leadership training, but they moved them online. And this is actually a 12-month-long global leadership program. So it's very intensive, and they serve more than 300 learners. And what they have done is use teams to help keep engagement high. They have a very small L&D team with very limited resources, but by having these teams and assigning team leads, so these team leads are other learners in the course that take on extra responsibility, which is actually great for them because they're practicing their leadership skills. They help guide the teams, which is less work for admins. And these courses get very high completion rates, and the learners are very happy with their experience. So this is one way you can keep a little bit of your in-person online in an impactful way. The second option is getting help for mentoring and coaching. So you can still offer this at scale and online without having to individually do it all by yourself. So this is where you bring in your network. Maybe you include learners managers or recruit volunteers in your company that might want to mentor. You could also host larger group coaching sessions or even assign buddies to learners, which are other people in their company that they can just bounce ideas off of and interact with. And one way that we've seen this done is actually in our own LXD course, Learning Experience Design course. We run this every quarter, and we have over 1,000 learners enroll each time. It would be really hard for me as that course facilitator to coach 1,000 people and also do my day job. So what we have decided to do is recruit high-performing alumni from past courses to be coaches. It's completely voluntary. We have a surprising high number of people who volunteer for this. Obviously, we train them all at once and provide some guides, and then they go out and do the coaching for us. And what we found is that learners are actually significantly more likely to reach out to a coach with questions and concerns than they are to an admin. It just feels like it's more of a peer-to-peer type interaction, which saves us as admins time and again makes people significantly more likely to complete the course. So these are just some ideas that I've seen work really well for being able to scale that mentoring and coaching. And then that component of in-person that everyone likes, that peer sharing and feedback. This can also be done online and scaled in the same way, very easy to do. One thing is very similar to coaching and mentoring is being able to kind of outsource giving feedback by letting learners give feedback to each other. So not only does this save you as the admin time, but it lets people in your company practice real skills like critical thinking, communicating feedback, interacting with others that have different opinions than them. So it's kind of, there's so many bonuses to this, and actually people really enjoy doing this. So this could be something as substantial as giving feedback on a rubric to a really robust assignment, or as simple as this example on the side, upload a picture that defines success for you, and then comment on 2 other people's posts. So by setting the stage and setting expectations, you're doing some facilitation of providing that feedback and peer sharing while letting learners interact with each other. And surprisingly, or maybe not surprisingly, depending on your viewpoint of peer feedback, people really like to do this. They find that they learn more from other people's experience than just going through the course on their own. And they also realize that their actual quotes. Someone had said, the feedback was key, and you can learn more from feedback that you give than that you receive. So this is just, if we're going back to that first chart that I showed you, really you're increasing the scale, you're increasing the collaboration, and you're increasing the impact all at the same time without a lot of effort on your part. And then finally, using data to help your scaled learning stay on track. So although we might think that when we're in front of a classroom of learners that they're all engaged and we can tell, I bet they're not as engaged as you think. They're probably texting, thinking about what they want to eat for lunch, or worried about some other thing with their families or maybe their pets. So the nice thing about online learning is that you can actually collect more data faster and be able to actually act on it. You're not waiting for that smile survey at the end of the workshop to say people liked it. You can actually see what's going on in real time. And this, coming from my science background, is something that I really, really enjoy about the online modality compared to in-person. So you can check data really frequently to monitor engagement. That might mean looking at how many learners have been active. When was the last day that they were active? How many comments have they posted? If you're just doing webinars and you're doing Zoom, for instance, you can see what % attention did they pay during the call. And you can use that to modify your experiences on the fly. So one example that I've seen recently that works really well, one of our Fortune 500 global enterprise clients was running a 4-week course on habit forming online. And because they knew that they could look at their data while the course was live, They did a very good job with that. And they realized between week 1 and week 2, if you look at this graph, there was not a big increase in the number of people who were active. And they were thinking, we really need to encourage activity. So they sent out a targeted email. It was something that was motivating, that was reflective. And by the next week, their activity rate increased by 30%. Because they were able to do that in real time, they didn't have to wait till the webinar or the course was over to realize people weren't paying attention. So this is just another benefit of the online modality. Okay, so now that you've heard about those 3 questions and how you can scale rapidly, I'm going to pass it back to Jessica. She has one more question, one more set of polls that she wants you to go through. Just think about what the next steps are going to be for you. And then I'll wrap it up and take the rest of the questions.
Yes, thank you so much. So I'm going to go ahead and quickly launch a poll. We're just curious how soon you are looking to move your training online. So you should see another poll pop up on your screen. So if you could just take a couple of seconds to vote, that'd be greatly appreciated. Thank you to everyone who has voted. We'll leave it open for about another 5 to 10 seconds just to grab all of your answers. Amazing. Thank you everyone who contributed to this poll. I'll just quickly close and share the results with you. So I don't think it's really much of a surprise seeing a majority of you who are looking to move training online in the next 3 months. I think given the circumstances that we are in and the uncertainty of when we are all able to return to our offices, return to our work, and just be next to someone, given that, I think it makes sense that most people are looking to transition their in-person programs online as quickly as possible. Regardless of where you are in your journey, we do hope that you found some value from this webinar and that when you are ready, or if you are already online, you have an idea of how you can scale your programs whenever you need to. So I'll go ahead and hide these results and then bring it back to Brittany to wrap it up, and we will be answering questions again. So please send them our way if you haven't already.
Great, and that really aligns with this first question, right? This is a question that I've actually heard frequently, and based on those poll results, most of you are planning to move online within 3 months. Now, that's both a long time and a short period of time, depending on what part of the online experience you're responsible for. But hopefully addressing these 3 common concerns have helped you be able to keep in mind what you need to do to be able to scale, not only scale effectively, scale quickly, but also scale with impact. So we talked about how you even start, how do you facilitate with limited resources, and how you maintain that impact of face-to-face training at scale. So with these resources that we've provided, hopefully this lets you be ready to scale with impact. Remember, everything is going to be a learning experience for you as well as your learners. So don't get caught up in needing it to be perfect before you let it out to the world, because we don't necessarily have that liberty right now with the way everything is working globally. We need to get things out quickly, but we also should keep in mind how we can do a little bit of extra work now to make it faster to scale, have higher impact, and be able to facilitate these learning experiences more quickly. So with that, I'll take any questions about any of the content. Remember that you do have those resources available to you to dig a little bit deeper if you're interested. And let me know what questions you have. Jessica, if there's anything that's come up, I can take those.
Great, thank you. And there are some questions, and we will take time now to just address them before we wrap up. Brittany, what metric do you think is most important to measure in an online experience?
Yeah, so when you really start to think about how much data is actually available, it can be very overwhelming. So the data that a lot of people find to be most impactful is that completion data. So how many people actually completed the course. Now, I do believe that that is obviously a very important metric, but you can complete a course without engaging. You can complete a course without actually learning anything. So although I would still measure that, one of the metrics I find most valuable is engagement metrics. So do you have polls or discussions in your online course? If so, are people interacting? Are they making comments? Are they coming back to the course frequently? Are they asking really good questions? Those are the metrics I care about. And I also want to encourage use of qualitative metrics. So not just numbers, but look at people's assignments. Is there evidence of behavior change that you're seeing? Can you see that people are growing in their ability to do certain skills? Are they asking questions that obviously show that they're on, another level of comprehension than just a quiz and getting the right answer? So I encourage you to think a little bit outside the box for what metrics you find most important and see if you can really tell what people are learning in your course besides just your completion metric.
Great, thank you. And Brittany, earlier you were talking about peer-to-peer feedback. Do you have any suggestions on how to manage the quality of feedback that is given?
Yes. So this is always a question when you start doing peer feedback. One of the things I found to be most beneficial is telling people this is what good feedback looks like. Give an example and saying, hey, although we might love to tell people good job or this looks great, that doesn't, although that is an important thing to say, that doesn't really help them grow in what they're learning about. So always provide some examples of what a good piece of feedback looks like and let people know that there is a lot of evidence that suggests that providing good feedback to others helps you learn better. So if you set the stage and set expectations that way, I have found that you get significantly higher quality peer feedback to the point where it's not something that you have to really be worrying about on a day-to-day.
Okay, great. And then we have a question here about multilanguage courses. So do you have any best practices about how to roll out multilanguage courses?
Yeah, so that's a good question. When we're talking about global, we're talking about scale, this is going to come up. So when I work with clients, there's a few ways that we do it. If we know we have big populations that speak certain languages, we might create different versions of the experience in that language. What I've also seen is for some of our really, really big clients, they maybe have their entire course experience in English, but people can choose to download transcripts of videos in different languages, download copies of resources in different languages. It really depends on how your company operates. Are they, for example, an English first company where that's the main language, but you also want to provide other transcripts for different languages? If you have enough people that speak that language, it might be better to have a separate experience for that. And that could just be as easy as copying the content that you already have, keeping it the same, but just making sure that it's translated.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Brittany.
Yeah.
And we just have one more question here before we totally wrap up this whole webinar. What are your thoughts on brainstorming online? Do you have any suggestions on how to do this? Typically, when you brainstorm, in person, everyone has the opportunity to kind of speak out loud. So how do you translate that online?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I find, maybe surprisingly, brainstorming works better online. People are less intimidated to give their thoughts when they're behind a computer screen. So we see this in a negative way in social media today. People say things they would never say to people's faces, but for brainstorming, it actually works really well. So even my team have been doing brainstorming sessions. You all jump on Zoom. Everybody just gives ideas. You throw things in the comment box. You draw pictures as you go through it. If you're in a course, maybe you have teams and you let teams do a virtual event and brainstorm in that way. And especially setting standards like, hey, all ideas are fair game. No idea is good. No idea is bad. Any ridiculous things that you can think about, just throw them out there. I think you might find that brainstorming works better in an online modality. That's what I've seen. Perfect.
Thank you so much, Brittany, for answering all of our questions. And I would just like to say thank you to everyone for joining us today. If we were unable to answer any of your questions, feel free to email us, and we're happy to follow up. And we did get a few questions about what type of online learning platform you would need or want to bring your courses online. We are a little biased, but if you would like to learn more about NovoEd's collaborative online learning platform, please type yes in the questions panel, and we can have someone follow up with you after the webinar. We are hosting a live product tour this Thursday as well, so if you want to get a first-hand look at how organizations leverage our collaborative online learning platform to move their in-person training online, we would love to invite you to join. You can use your phone's camera to scan the QR code to sign up, and we'll also send a link to register for this in our follow-up email. Lastly, please fill out the exit survey that pops up when you leave. This will provide us with valuable feedback so that we can continue to improve our webinars moving forward. Thank you, everyone, again, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you. Thanks for joining on this learning experience, and I hope everybody has a great day and stay safe.